Yo, what's up, guys? We're back. It's another breakdown and predictions video this week. This week, it's going to be for UFC Vegas 70. Nikita Krylov taking on Ryan Spann in the main event. And we're coming off a really good week. Once again, last week, UFC Vegas 69, we won again on the Patreon. And I'm trying to tell you guys, man, we've been killing it on there. Every week, we've been making some money. So definitely go over there. Patreon.com/MyPredictionGuru. Support the channel. Start making yourself some money, having fun watching these fights. So for sure, check that out. But yeah, and another thing is you guys killed it last week with the likes, man. That was freaking awesome. You crushed it. We got way over 100 likes. So now that I know you guys can do it, let's hit that like button again, man. Let's try to get to 150 likes. That'd be awesome. We got a lot more views. We got more engagement on the last video due to you guys liking it. So let's try to get that again. Let's try to get up to 150 likes. We got pretty close to that last week, so I think we can get there. So 150 likes. Hit that like button right now. But let's get into this card with this first fight of the night. We got Jose Johnson. He's taking on Garrett Armfield. And I see Jose Johnson is a pretty... a lot of people are picking him. He's a guy that a lot of people are picking as an underdog of the week. And it should be an all-action fight. I mean, Johnson, I think, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest 135er in the UFC. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people are on him. 6 foot, 71-inch reach. And he has 58 MMA fights under his belt. He's extremely experienced. 15-7 as a pro, a ton of amateur bouts. And Garrett Armfield, this is going to be his second UFC fight. He fought David Onama on short notice. Jose Johnson, this is going to be his debut after winning on the Contender Series. Armfield, he fought David Onama at 145, which was a really tough fight to go in there and do. Now he's back at 35s, and it's a much easier fight to win here. He's coming out of a really good gym, Kill Cliff FC, and he's more of the average height for 135. He's 5'6", so he's going to have to figure out how to navigate that major height disadvantage. Reach-wise, his reach is 70 inches, so he only has a 4-inch reach disadvantage. His arms are fairly long. And his last fight, he faced a really tall fighter, so it's going to be a similar look again here. As far as how these two fighters match up, I think Armfield, his game plan is going to be pretty obvious. He's going to want to wrestle heavy, try to overwhelm Johnson with volume, stay in his face. Jose Johnson is a fighter who, on the feet, likes to analyze, take time to set things up. More of a sniper, isn't super high volume. And he can get away with that because he just stays active enough with the kicks, crosses on the outside. When fighters get aggressive, he can meet them with knees, elbows, more concussive shots. And if you give Jose Johnson space in the clinch, he's deadly there with knees and elbows. Has some really, really nasty KOs in those areas. For 135er, he has big power. Johnson, his chin is good as well. He's composed. And even though sometimes he can get backed up and hit a little bit, he keeps a good high guard and he can block and roll with most of the shots that he takes. Garrett Armfield, he is more of a boxer, but he's fast hands, solid combos. He does a good job pressuring uppercuts, body shots to open up the headshots, going body head. And he does a good job of using the body shots to set up his wrestling, set up his takedown shots. And he needs to impose the wrestling early. If he could back Johnson up, use his hands to set up the level change or clinch, he can kind of start to make Johnson start to think and make the striking a little bit easier as it goes down the stretch. And Armfield's strong in the clinch. He does a good job getting the double unders. He, on top, is more of a guy that just controls. And for Jose Johnson, he has bad wrestling. But sometimes he can surprise you with a body lock. But his defensive wrestling, pretty non-existent. He stands tall. He's flat-footed. So it makes it pretty easy to get in on his hips. But he's really developed a good elbow game off his back, good submission game. He could scramble. He's hard to take down. If he can get on top, he's pretty solid. He'll rain down heavy elbows. His cardio is really good as well. So some fighters, if they can't hold him down, they will tend to get tired. And Johnson ends up finishing them or getting a dominant position on the ground from a bad takedown and taking over. And I think he has the juice, more upside to finish in this fight. Armfield, I think, would be smarter to try to take away that space a lot of the time, get the takedown, stuff Johnson against the cage, and try to control his way to victory. It's hard to deal with Johnson on the ground, but if Armfield could push him, like I said, push him against the cage, basic control time, I think that's probably the best area he could be in. And I think his boxing combinations are going to be fairly effective too. It's a big fight for Armfield because he's already 0-1 in the UFC, and he's going to be coming down to his original weight class, so I think he kind of needs a win here. And I'm going to go with Armfield getting it done here. I think that Johnson's a tough character to deal with because of his height, but his wrestling defense is weak, and I think Armfield is the superior boxing. Johnson sometimes can be too nonchalant in there and just lacks some of that urgency that I like to see at times. Even though he can get those highlight reel finishes, I don't know if he can win minutes. And Armfield is hittable, but unless he just gets knocked out with a one shot, I think he kind of starts to run away with it with the activity and just being able to mix it up down the stretch. So I'm going to go with Garrett Armfield by decision in this one. I think he's going to come into this one in good shape. I think he's going to be ready to go, and I think he's going to kind of just be a little bit too well-rounded, a little bit too active. And the second fight of the night here, we got at 135 pounds between Haley Cowan and Aline Perez. In my opinion, both these girls kind of fight similar. When you look at both of them, they're both big for the weight. Perez has quite a few fights at 145. Cowan is ripped up, and she's very strong, tall, athletic for 135 too. She easily could fight at 145, I believe, also. And they like to use the grappling, push against the cage, use their size, get girls tired, and control them from the top position. I feel like Perez is a little more skilled. I think her striking has, in the past, not looked very good, and I think Cowan used to have the better striking, just out pure athleticism. Cowan, to me, her striking is a little bit weak. I think that she has good check hooks and good kicks, but there's not a lot of variance there with her striking. Her defense isn't good, and she just overall doesn't really like to stay on the feet, doesn't seem too comfortable at range, where Perez, I think she's getting a little bit more comfortable with staying outside, throwing kicks, throwing combinations, and she's getting a little bit better with her striking at MMA Masters. She, in her last fight, was pressuring and doing decent with the striking, but she just couldn't get out of the habit of working away into the clinch, where she was at a disadvantage against a judo girl, and she ended up getting submitted in that one. And Perez has a lot of, she has a lot of something to fight here for. I mean, she went in her last fight and she was talking a lot of shit, and she didn't back it up. So the pressure's on her now to perform here against Cowan and not go 0-2 in the UFC. She's at 135. The last fight was at 45. So no excuses, and now is the time for her to go in there and get it done. But how I see this fight kind of going down is I think it's going to end up being a wrestling, grappling type of fight. Even though I think Perez might have a slight advantage on the feet, Cowan is the longer girl. They're both going to want to engage in the clinch, and they're going to end up meeting in the middle. Neither of them have really that distance control or any ability to strike at range for long periods of time, in my opinion. They both want to get it to the clinch, and I think that Cowan early is going to be the stronger girl. She's going to be able to hold Perez against the cage, maybe get Perez down. But what Perez has is the better grappling, in my opinion. I think she could scramble. I think off bottom, she's superior. She's decent at working her way back up to her feet. I think Cowan, with her get-up game, when she gets put on her back, it's pretty weak. I think she can get put in dominant positions as well. She has been submitted in the past. So I think if Perez gets on top, she's going to have the better chance of potentially submitting. But early on, Cowan, when she gets on top herself, is really effective with ground and pound, big elbows. But she can start to lose position, get tired, and her cardio kind of starts to slow down midway through that second round. So for Perez, I think that she just has to try to push this pace, and she can't just let Cowan stall whole rounds, pushing her against a cage or getting her to the ground and holding her on top and throwing elbows. And she doesn't want to be on bottom with Cowan, because Cowan has big elbows from the top position. Her submission game isn't really that great, but she will do damage with the ground and pound, slow girls down. She's really big, good top control, good pressure, and that's where she wants to be. But if you can put her on her back, she gets really tired, she makes mistakes, and that's where Perez could start to take over. I think Perez, I just feel like she's going to come in here with a chip on her shoulder, and I think she's going to fight a little bit harder, and I see that being the difference in the fight. I think both these girls are really, really close skill-wise. I feel like Cowan is the better athlete, probably stronger, but Perez is more conditioned. I think she's probably going to be the girl that puts out a little bit more, and I think Cowan's going to start out hot early. She's going to maybe get a takedown or some cage control, but I think as the fight goes on, Perez is going to start to boss the fight, pressure, get Cowan in the clinch, start to control there a little bit, maybe get a takedown, get on top. And I wouldn't be shocked if Perez got a late finish in this one, but I'm going to go with Aline Perez to get the slight upset, win this fight. And this next fight here, we got Nurullo Leavitt. He's making his UFC debut. He's taking on Rafael Alves. This is a high-level fight here. Nurullo Leavitt, even though he's a UFC debutant, he's undefeated and a prototypical Caucasus fighter. He hails from Tajikistan, and he looks and fights a lot like Khabib, so I see people already making comparisons, and he isn't as effective with the style, but super good. On the feet, he carries his hands a little bit too low for my liking, and he's a little flat-footed, heavy on that lead leg, so I do think fighters are going to have opportunities to pot shot him, stick and move, maybe walk him into a knockout shot, chop his legs, but he has good pressure feints, and those big punches, has good speed, power, so fighters have to respect his crosses and overhands, and he backs guys to the fence, takes them down, and once he gets on top, he's just really effective. He also can chain wrestle, so his wrestling against the cage is hard to deal with. I wouldn't say he's one of the upper echelon wrestlers in the UFC, but he's still very elite. And when he can get on top, he has heavy ground and pound. He does a good job controlling the wrist and throwing ground and pound, but not a big finisher. He has 2 ground and pound finishes. He did finish with ground and pound in the Contender Series, but the majority of his wins are via decision, 6 decision wins. His cardio looks pretty good. He does slow down a little bit. And the majority of his fights have been easy one-way traffic, so we haven't seen him face too much adversity or get stuffed on takedowns, get put in a bad position, which Alves could potentially put him in. But for Rafael Alves, super flashy, dangerous, athletic, explosive guy. And I think the UFC's fucking him here, man. I mean, I'm a fan of Alves' style. I think his last fight with Drew Dober was badass. And I don't get why you're putting him in here with a wrestler that's just going to try to sniff his crotch and take him down. Like, use Alves in some fun fights, man. Put him in there with some beasts. But, hopefully he could stick around in the UFC if he takes the L here. But he has a chance to win against anyone. And he fights in bursts, so there's a lot of inactivity with Alves, but when he goes, he goes. And he'll throw some wild kicks, jump knees, powerful punches. He blitzes forward really effectively with straight shots, closes distance super fast. And he runs a lot, and if you start to chase him, then you'll plant his feet and knock you out, so you have to be really aware. His defense is good. We saw that head movement in the Dober fight. And if you stay in the pocket with him, most guys are going to get dusted. One thing about Alves, he doesn't really take leg kicks that well. He doesn't throw leg kicks too much either. So I don't know if that's going to be something he could take advantage of with the Leavitt. But I also don't think it's something that the Leavitt is going to really target either. Fighters with good pressure and durability have been able to wear down Alves and then beat him like Drew Dober we just saw do. And that was the 4th knockout loss of Alves' career. But Alves is always live for a KO or sub and club finish. 7 knockout wins, and he's a great grappler. He isn't the greatest wrestler, and he's comfortable off his back, so he'll throw those wild kicks, jump knees, which put him in bad position, and he'll try to counter with guillotines, and he is a nasty guillotine. I mean, that's something that Alves has to be very aware of. If he gets caught in that front choke, he's going to be in big trouble, and he also has good leg lock sweeps, Alves does, so Alves is going to be, attacking off bottom, but he also, I've seen him get held down, like in the fight with Ismagulov. And when Alves gets on top, he's not really super dangerous. I mean, he could take the back hit and Marinica chokes, but he doesn't really look to get on top too much. But I feel like Alves, his cardio is okay, but he's one of those fighters that fights in bursts, slows down, and speeds up. So if you make him fight at a high pace, he can definitely get tired. And he has 7 submissions, but he's been submitted 6 times. So he's been finished quite a few times in his career, 10 times to be exact. And Alves is live in the fight. He's one of the most explosive athletic fighters in the UFC. His power is guillotine, give him a chance to win against anyone. But Nurullo, I think, is going to win this fight by just grinding Alves if he doesn't get clipped. I think his wrestling is too overpowering here. I think he's going to be able to take Alves down. I don't think Alves is going to show that urgency to get up from bottom. And Alves will probably start to get a little bit tired, frustrated. And I just think Aliev is going to grind him out and win by decision. I don't see him really getting a finish here. He doesn't have that submission ability, and I don't think Alves is going to let him just finish him with ground and pound and wilt like that. So I think it's going to be a decision. And this next fight here, we got Joe Solecki taking on Carl Deaton III. And this is a short notice fight. It's a hard matchup for Carl Deaton to enter the UFC with. Stylistically, his weakest attribute is his wrestling, and Joe Solecki isn't a very well-rounded fighter, but one thing he can do is wrestle and grapple. In the stand-up, Deaton has the advantage against Solecki. He has a nice jab, he has pretty fast hands, good combos, solid boxing in general. I've seen him throw a jab left hook or feint left hook, and his left hook is his money punch, but you don't really see Deaton kick or do too much outside of punch much. His leg kicks are okay, but doesn't really use a lot of movement either. He's flat-footed, plod. He relies a lot on fighters sticking in the pocket in the phone booth with him. And if you stay in the pocket with Deaton, he can put his hands together and touch you up. And power-wise, he doesn't really have that one-punch power, but he has good volume. He He doesn't really do anything spectacular in regards to his striking. Isn't the best athlete either, but he's durable. He loves to fight. You could tell he's just one of those guys. And he makes it tough. If you want to straight up strike with him, he can be pretty effective. He's an okay offensive wrestler. You'll see him catch kicks and push fighters back and then get him down against the cage. And on top, he has good control. His top game is okay. In this fight, I think it would be dumb to wrestle and grapple with Joe Solecki, though, and Deaton is not a great defensive wrestler. He's scrappy, so he makes fighters work to take him down, and he'll try hard to get back to his feet. He's pretty hard to hold down, but his wrestling defense is just not up to par. He has several front choke victories, so that's something you have to be a little bit weird about when you shoot in on him, but if you can avoid that, it's probably smooth sailing as far as finishing the takedown. And his defensive grappling and get-up game, like I said, aren't bad, but he hasn't faced a grappler of the caliber of Joe Solecki. And cardio-wise, he has good cardio, so if fighters can't finish him on the ground, they, may get tired, and then he could take him out down the stretch. But I just don't imagine Solecki's going to get tired. And Deaton is tough to finish. He's only been finished twice, once by submission, once by KO. And he's going to be trying to push the pace, trying to maintain range with the jab and land that big left hook. For Solecki on the feet, he fakes and feints. He's pretty fluid. Throws some hard low kicks and a good left hook to the body and then up to the head. But his defense is bad and he doesn't want to strike. He's low volume. You know what he wants to do, and that's get it to the ground. And Solecki's a grinder. He's a black belt, jiu-jitsu guy, solid wrestler. Good job throwing punches to duck under for the double. And he also can catch kicks and take you down that way. When he gets you down, very methodical. He'll slowly advance position to position. He uses enough ground and pound to not let the ref stand it up. And eventually, if he gets you tired, he'll get to the back and finish you or get an arm triangle. And he has good chokes. He has a real nice squeeze. And I've seen him put guys to sleep. So definitely dangerous on the ground. And I just think Solecki's wrestling is going to be way too much. I think he gets on top, controls, and wins this fight. Deaton has better striking, but it's not that dangerous. And I don't think his grappling defense is good enough, especially the wrestling defense, to stop from Solecki taking him and holding him down. And Solecki has the cardio and top control to do it for 3 rounds. I think the line is about right. It's tough to back Solecki as a huge favorite because the striking isn't good and he has a questionable chin, but I just feel like he's going to probably get the typical decision win that he does get in this fight. Uses cage wrestling, uses wrestling from the top position, and just grind out the victory. Great fight. Ode Osbourne taking on Charles Energy Johnson. 2 flyweights that are explosive. 2 flyweights to go out there and really throw down, like to strike. And finally, they're giving Charles Johnson a striker. It's going to be a fun one to watch. And both these guys are really entertaining, man. When you look at Ode Osbourne, I think he's the much faster guy. He's extremely fast, man, extremely explosive. And I think Ode Osbourne has a lot of potential. It's just, in his last fight, he got caught, he got knocked out, and his chin is questionable, man. You've seen him get knocked out twice in his last 5 fights. He has gotten rocked in some other fights that I've seen, and that's one of his major issues, along with just he has grappling deficiencies. In this fight, I don't really know if that's going to be a big factor. I think Johnson, even though he's the better grappler, is going to keep it standing. But Ode Osbourne's chin, to me, in this fight is the biggest issue for him, potentially. But on the feet, I think he has the major speed advantage and he has the reach advantage. He's someone that, if he can mitigate some of those mistakes that he does, I feel like he needs to work a lot more just the hands because they're good enough, man. In his last fight, he was mixing a lot of those flying knees, trying to be dynamic, which is good, but it could also get you caught. You can get a little bit too predictable, even if it's creative attacks, and that's what happened with Tyson Nam, and got caught, clipped when he was trying to go for the flying knee, was off his feet, and got put to sleep. So against Charles Johnson, I think he needs to work what he's really good at, which is the 1-2s, 3-2s, feints and pressure. Stay in and out, control that distance. When Johnson tries to close the gap on him, counter him, and get out of range, don't stay in that pocket for too long. And Charles Johnson's going to want to make it more of a dogfight. He's going to want to get it where they're both sticking in the pocket, they're both standing right in front of each other, because that's where Charles Johnson really shines. That Muay Thai background comes out. He has a lot of really good counter-striking ability. He's a long, rangy fighter himself, and he can mix in some real dangerous attacks like elbows, knees, and you can get real slick, throw combinations, power shots. But Johnson, at times, also can be pretty inactive. Sometimes he can back guys up and kind of let guys unload on him to get them tired for the first half of the round, then try to come back in the second half of the round. And I feel like he makes some fights a lot closer than they need to be because he doesn't go for it, and he doesn't have, I don't know if he doesn't have the ability, but he just doesn't push that high pace for 15 minutes that I think he could do. With Osbourne, I think it's imperative on Charles Johnson to be the guy that gets on that front foot and tries to push that pace, tries to get in the face of Osbourne, back him up, tries to, make him more of a firefight. Because Osbourne, if he can pot shot and, use that speed and just back up Johnson and touch him and keep controlling that distance, he'll do that all night. So Johnson is going to be the one that I think has to mix it up and either use the clinch, a couple takedowns, surprise Osbourne with the grappling, or use his striking more offensively, more volume from Johnson, and just try to make it more of a dogfight. Because I think if it's a finesse fight, I think Osbourne's speed is just going to be too big of a difference. And I think Osbourne's going to come in here with a smarter game plan. I think he's going to come in here being a little bit more economical, a little bit safer due to just getting knocked out. So I feel like he's going to be on his P's and Q's, smarter, sharp for this fight. I don't think he's going to want to afford back-to-back losses. For Charles Johnson, he's coming off 2 wins in a row. He's fighting really, really quickly back-to-back-to-back, which can be good or bad. But personally, I feel like, that's one of the reasons why I'm leaning towards Osbourne as well. 32 years old, fighting 3 times in, 4 or 5 months. I think that's a really hard pace to keep. And I feel like Osbourne is going to be able to probably take advantage of that. I think Charles is going to be a little bit inactive at times in the fight, where I think Osbourne is going to be a little bit more flashy, pressuring, being a little bit faster and more volume-oriented. Charles Johnson, one thing about him is he's super durable, so Osbourne can't go out there and expect the knockout. He just has to fight within himself and use the basics, and I think he can get the victory here. Johnson, if he does want to mix in the grappling, that's where it could get interesting, and that's where he could have the advantage. If he can get the clinch, get a takedown, or somehow shoot in and get a takedown, which he doesn't really do too often. But if he can do that, get on top, I think he could have an advantage. So I think Johnson overall, if you talk about the diversity of striking and just being an overall more technical, advanced striker, it's probably Johnson. But I feel like Osbourne is more dynamic, more active, and has a big speed advantage. And I feel like his length also could give him an advantage too in this fight. So I'm leaning towards Osbourne getting the win here by decision. And I think he's just going to be a little bit too fast, a little bit too slick for Johnson. Control that distance, not get hit with enough counters. I think Johnson's going to be just a little bit too inactive. I think the reach is going to be a factor, and I think Osbourne's going to win this one in a close fight on points here. And for this next fight, we got Jordan Leavitt making the comeback after the loss to Paddy Pimblett, taking on Victor Martinez, who's making his UFC debut. And I thought Jordan Leavitt, for someone that has the experience level that he did, never having fought overseas, never really being in a big fight, handled that opportunity with Paddy Pimblett really well. He didn't let the opportunity overwhelm him. He had the whole crowd against him, and I felt like he was winning the fight until he lost. So he definitely showed a real good mindset in that one, and this is going to be a lot easier circumstances here, fighting in his backyard in Las Vegas. He's going to be fighting in the Apex. There's not going to be a bunch of people, trash talking him as he's walking in the cage. So Victor Martinez is going to be his opponent here. The Brick, this is going to be his UFC debut after winning the Contender Series, and he's a veteran. He's fought 17 times already, and he's looking good currently. He's on a win streak, so it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, Jordan Leavitt, we all know what kind of fighter he is at this point in his career. On the feet, he's super awkward, throws a lot of kicks, movement, and he's someone that's not really going to engage too much with you. He's going to try to get you to chase him and then end up getting the takedown, use his weird kicks to end up on his back and get you to get on top of him, where it's almost like a guard pull. And, he's hard to hit, though, and he's awkward. He's someone that's kind of difficult to deal with on the feet. He throws you off your game. And with Victor Martinez, he's dealing with someone that has real good boxing and pull twos. Victor Martinez is more of a counterpuncher, and I don't see Leavitt really giving him those big opportunities to counterpunch or get those pull counters, because Leavitt isn't going to be engaging. He's going to be coming forward. I don't see him really just trying to enter boxing range like that. I think he's going to be much more smart about it. trying to use the kicks to, get Victor to come to him and then set up that clinch or set up the level change and get it to the ground. And I'm not really sold on Martinez's grappling, man. I've seen him get taken down, and he's improved his takedown defense. His get-ups are good, but he does expose his back to stand up. And he does have power, but I feel like his striking is pretty basic. It's pretty easy to navigate. He boxes. He has fast hands on the inside and good pull twos. He'll mix in the body to go to the head. Looks like he has pretty good power, but I don't necessarily think he has like a dynamic striking game where he's going to be controlling distance, not letting Leavitt get inside and beating him up from range. I think he has to enter kind of that danger zone where Leavitt can grab him to get his boxing going, and I think from that point on, I think Leavitt's going to be the guy that has the advantage in the grappling. I see him coming in here, being in good condition, trying to get the bounce back win here. And I think he's going to be able to either get the back and get a submission win in the first round or grind it out and get a decision. So I think Martinez is just too one-dimensional with the boxing. And even though Leavitt is one-dimensional as well with the grappling, his striking is awkward and he is able to force guys to fight his game. I mean, he's done it with almost everyone that he's fought in the UFC thus far. And I just don't think Martinez has that dynamic ability to make Jordan Leavitt a striker in this one. I think Leavitt's going to be able to control the fight, make it his fight with his awkwardness, and I see him getting the win here. I'm going to say it's a decision win for Jordan Leavitt.
Another female fight for this next one. It's Gabriella Fernandes taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. And I'm pretty excited for Gabriella Fernandes' debut here. I think this is a girl that could potentially be a factor. We have to see, but it's going to be her UFC and USA debut. And she's a great athlete. Striking is very technical and sharp. She's big for the weight, fast hands, good kicks, good forward pressure. In and out movement are on point. She throws good feints. Her power is good. And she'll throw some nice 1-2s, 3-2s, body kicks. She has nice leg kicks, front kicks, round kicks. Good job targeting the body. And her defense is also good. So if she can keep it standing, I think she's going to have the advantage. But she does like to fight moving forward and be the bully, and so does Jasudavicius. So neither fighter should be hard to find. I think it's going to be a war on the feet. But I think Fernandes has more power, speed, and technique. And wrestling-wise, Fernandes is a question mark to me. I haven't seen her face too many wrestlers. She has been taken down in a couple fights I saw, but she was able to get back up to her feet pretty quickly. Her guard actually looked decent. I wouldn't be shocked to see her be held down by Jasudavicius, though, if she ends up on bottom, because she does like to play jiu-jitsu, and I did see her held down for a couple minutes in the second round of her fight with Edna Oliveira. Fernandes in her last fight did snatch a guillotine finish in the first round, so potentially she could be improving with her jiu-jitsu. She is a purple belt, but I think it's unlikely for her to catch a guillotine on someone like Jasudavicius or a UFC-level opponent. And Fernandes isn't really an offensive wrestler. She does have a strong Muay Thai clinch, nice knees, and her cardio is solid. And even though this is her UFC debut, she has a lot of high-level experience. She won the LFA flyweight title. She beat a 9-4 fighter to do it. She fought Maria Silva, who's a UFC fighter. She lost that one. She has a win over a UFC fighter, Jasmine Lucindo. And she's going to be looking to parlay her 7-fight win streak into a UFC debut victory. But the game plan for Jasmine Jasudavicius, in my eyes, is going to be pretty simple in this one. I think she has to pressure, close that space, try to clinch against the cage, look for takedowns. On the feet, Jasudavicius has good length, pressure, durability, but she's a little bit slow, tends to plod forward, and she struggles to get on the inside, especially if you saw her last fight with Natalia Silva, which was her first UFC loss. She really struggled with the movement of Silva, and she has okay hands when she can get fighters to exchange with her, so for Jasudavicius, you just need to get your footwork going and not stand in the pocket with her. Her defense isn't good, and she doesn't move her head, so you could certainly pot shot her. And she doesn't slow down, though, and she could take a beating, so fighters have to be in shape, ready to have movement on point for 3 rounds if that's the game plan. Jasudavicius is a solid wrestler and grappler, and that's where she needs to live here. She's good at using her length, her head positioning against the fence, working trips. On top, she can control it fairly well. Being with the ATT, you should have her... they should have her wrestling even more on point. And if she can keep Fernandes against the cage or on her back, she's going to have a chance to win here. She's also always in tremendous shape, has a ton of heart. She loves to fight, and she's going to lay it all out here, I think. And this is a fight where I like what I see from Fernandes. I think she may be the goods, but I still have some questions, and I want to see how Fernandes deals with the clinch and the wrestling of Jasudavicius, along with Jasudavicius' just overall toughness and tenaciousness. If she can dominate Jasmine with her stand-up or even better finish, then I think she could be a future contender. Jasudavicius is going to have a shot in this fight if she can put Fernandes on the cage or on her back. I just don't know if she's going to be able to have the enough control to offset the striking advantage and damage that I think Fernandes is going to do. Fernandes looks strong. She looks like a great athlete. And unless she gets gasses out or gets totally exposed in the wrestling realm here, I think she's going to win this fight. So right now I'm going to go with Gabriella Fernandes, but it's something that I'm not extremely bullish on. I think Jasmine Jasudavicius definitely has a chance to win. And it's a little bit to be determined with Fernandes for me, but I think she has potential, and I like what I see from her. So I'm going to pick her to win here by decision. Coming up next year, we got a banger between Erick Gonzalez and Trevor Peek. This is a great fight. Erick Gonzalez, he's back against the wall. This is going to be his third UFC fight. He's taking on a UFC debutant, and so far he's 0-2 in his first two UFC fights. I mean, to be fair, though, look who he's went in there with. Terrence McKinney and Jim Miller. Those guys are top 30, top 25 fighters. And Trevor Peek, he's coming in off the Contender Series, and it's definitely a more even matchup in this one. It's short notice for both guys. Gonzalez and Peek were both getting ready to fight on this card, but their opponents pulled out, so the UFC just matched them together. Definitely a lower level fight in the weight class, but both fighters are explosive and they bring it, so it should be fun. And Erick Gonzalez, he is long rangey, he has some fast hands, holds his hands low, he has a nice up jab, decent long punches, good counter crosses and hooks, and he's down to brawl. He has a solid chin, some okay power, pretty good kicks too. His striking technically is superior by a large margin in comparison to Peek, in my opinion. The issue is Erick Gonzalez is just a crazy dude. He tends to get into wars, wane into fire, be super hittable, and he has a good chin and cardio, but Jim Miller dusted him, and Trevor Peek has that one-punch power, so he just has to be smart here. I think Erick Gonzalez is the better grappler. He has good trips in the clinch, and he uses his wrestling to mix it up, really rather than hold guys down. His control on top is a little questionable, and his takedown defense is also a little bit questionable, but his get-up game is good, and he has good submission defense. I feel he's going to be able to stand up from under Trevor Peek if Peek does get him down a couple of times. And Gonzalez has to be ready to fight another powerful, explosive puncher, which, that's going to be a hard style for him, but I feel like he has the cardio advantage, Gonzalez. He has the experience advantage. He just needs to fight smart, composed, use his experience, and get the win. But his chin is getting questionable because of the damage he's taken in his last two fights. I think he's going to be in great shape, extremely motivated to win this one. But if he doesn't brawl, then that's going to give him a much better chance. For Trevor Peek, not the most technical fighter, but he's very powerful, athletic. He has exceptional heart. He was able to come back from the dead in his last fight to knock out his opponent, earn a UFC contract, and tends to come forward and use his speed and power. Good feints. He wings big, heavy punches. He'll mix it up body head and try to mix in takedown attempts. Throws some real heavy leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks, but doesn't set the kicks up and get clipped heavy off the kicks. His defense is bad, and he's a pretty hittable fighter. His wrestling is good, but not elite. I've seen him lift, get big slams, but his control on top isn't really anything to write home about. He does have good ground and pound, but he doesn't have great control. His takedown defense is questionable, and he is a good grappler, but I feel like someone that's a good wrestler will expose him and show that he isn't necessarily... He uses a lot of strength and just tenaciousness to win with his wrestling and grappling. But cardio-wise, I think Peek comes in great shape. He just pushes a wild pace, and he can't sustain it, so he definitely gasses himself out. Pretty much Peek is kill or be killed all octane. I think this fight's going to be a car crash, but I think if it starts to get deeper, I think Gonzalez is probably going to win it with his experience. I think Gonzalez is definitely live. He could knock it out in the first round. I think Trevor Peek by round one knockout is a decent play. But if Erick Gonzalez was smart to me, he would wrestle early, try to get Peek tired. Peek is going to come out really fast, and I feel if Gonzalez could slow that down and start to pick his shots and Peek gets a little gassed, then he could finish him. Peek, I don't think isn't necessarily first round or bust, but I think his best chance to win is definitely in the first round. I don't trust him after that. And I think Gonzalez, even though he's lost his recent fights, he's been fighting a much higher level of competition. And I just have not seen Trevor Peek in there enough with a good fighter in a tough fight, tired in the second, third rounds. And I'm going to go with Erick Gonzalez here via KO in the second or third. I think he could navigate the danger. I think his cardio experience, technical advantages are going to shine through. And I see him getting the win here. I'm going to say second or third round KO TKO for Erick Gonzalez. And up next here, we got another really fun matchup between two guys that I think are going to go out there and finish each other in the first round. I don't really see this fight going very long. I think the best bet to target on this fight would be the under, honestly. Mike Mallot against Yohan Lainesse. Both these guys are Canadians, and they both bring it, man. I mean, if you look at these guys in the first round, they're throwing heavy. They're sitting down on their punches, and they're really trying to knock you out. So it's going to be a super banger in my opinion. And when you look at how both these guys fight, I think Yohan is a little bit trickier, but Mallot is a lot more technical. Yohan Lainesse, he has a really long reach. He is very mobile, and he likes to move around on the outside, almost run a lot, and then explode in with these punches. And if you do stick in the pocket with him, he has explosive power in both hands. That left hook that he lands is just vicious, and he could just put your lights out unconscious. So he's dangerous on the inside, and he runs away and tries to pull you into shots, has decent kicks too, and he can wrestle a little bit. So all that makes him a pretty hard guy to deal with. But Lainesse tends to get tired with all that movement, all that exploding in and out, throwing heavy punches, and he starts to get a little bit more wild, looping shots, not as technical, straight down the middle. He starts to lower that movement, and fighters can get inside on him, start ripping him to the body, to the head, and exposing his kind of weaknesses in terms of technical striking on the inside. And that's where I think Mike Mallot's going to want to be. Mike Mallot is someone that's mobile as well. He has that wide stance, bounces in and out, but he wants to be more in the pocket, pick his shots, and he's more of a sniper. He'll either land, heavy overhands, heavy hooks, and more one strikes at a time, and he can kind of catch you, and he doesn't have the same knockout power that Lainesse has where he's putting guys unconscious, but he has big power himself where he could drop you and submit you or TKO you like we saw with Mickey Gall. And I think he's a little bit more sharp with this counter strikes, a little bit more technical. But both these guys get hit. And one thing about Mallot, man, I mean, the guy gets hit way more than I think people say. I mean, I've seen barely anyone going with Lainesse this week. But when you look at Mike Mallot, I mean, he's got knocked out in the past. He got rocked and dropped against Solomon Renfro early in the fight. He got rocked against Mickey Gall. He, in my opinion, he gets hit quite a bit. And he gets hit clean. And early on, he goes for it in the first round and really tries to get that finish. And against Lainesse, that's a dangerous thing to do, man. I mean, we've seen him separate fighters from their consciousness badly. And I just feel like Mallot's going to get caught here, man. I think if it goes to the ground, Mallot's going to have a big advantage. I think it's tough to trust either fighter down the stretch. I mean, are you really going to trust Mike Mallot's cardio? I mean, the guy hasn't been out of the first round in ages, man, and he hasn't fought at this weight out of the first round. He really pushes the high pace and goes for it too. So I'm almost favoring Lainesse as the fight goes longer just because he's been there at this weight and a lot more recently, even though he doesn't have great cardio either. But I think Yohan Lainesse is going to come out here. I think it's going to be a first-round finish. I think he's going to knock him out in the first round. So plus 700 for that, I'm definitely down with that. I think that's a great bet on Lainesse there. And if Mallot wins, I think he's going to win, be a first-round club and suffer a knockout too. So I think the under's a good one on this one. I think it's going to be a quick fight where they go in here, exchange a little bit. Whoever lands first is probably going to hurt the opponent and get the victory. But I think Lainesse is a little bit bigger, a little bit more durable. He hits harder, and I think he's going to catch Mallot and put him out cold. And up next, we got Tatiana Suarez making her long-awaited return against Martinez de la Rosa. And from a perspective, like fight breakdown perspective, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. It's kind of hard, in my opinion, to break down Suarez until we see her again. But one thing about her, man, you really got to commend her just for getting back in the cage, man. She's a pretty inspirational girl. I mean, you go and look at her story. She had cancer, came back from that. She totally blew out her knee, came back from that. She had a neck issue, came back from that, then totally blew out her knee again. And now she's making a return from that second total knee blowout. So it's hard to say she's going to come out and look 100% again, though. That's where I'm kind of struggling on the minus 750 and Suarez future champ and all that. I have to see her perform, man. I really do. I mean, she comes out here and she looks like the old Tatiana Suarez, where she looks like the Suarez that fought Carla Esparza, then yeah, I think she could become the champion most likely, especially at 115. But she's coming in this one at 125.
She hasn't fought in a long, long time. She's 32 years old, so she's not necessarily young. And I just don't know how she's going to look. I mean, we all know that she has world-class wrestling, Olympic-level wrestling, and her ability to transition on the ground and just kind of blanket girls and eventually get them tired and either ground and pound them out or get the submission was incredible. I mean, she was one of the best, if not the best, female grappler we've seen to date in MMA, one of them. But I just don't know if she can summon that back up. I mean, even if you go and look at her last fight with who's the good Nina Ansaroff, Nina Nunes, she kind of struggled in that fight. She didn't have that same type of performance, and I know she had the injury kind of nagging at her, but I just hope that she comes in here and is at 100%, because if she's at 100% on the feet, she has that ability to control the distance, especially at 155 with her range and use the kicks, and then her grappling is just overpowering, man, and her wrestling is just incredible, so she could just get these girls down, squash them. I mean, we saw what she did to Carla Esparza, just absolutely obliterated her, and she destroyed Alexa Grasso. I mean, this girl has beaten some high-level competitors and made it look easy. So, Montana De La Rosa, I mean, if she gets that version of Tati Suarez, I don't think she has much of a chance at all. I think she's going to get grinded into the dirt and probably finished on the ground. But if you get a lesser version of Suarez, then you have a big chance to get the upset. And you look at De La Rosa, she's one of these girls that's kind of a failed prospect, where came into the UFC initially off Ultimate Fighter, got some wins, and got in the top 15, had some hype, but recently she hasn't been able to get a win. In one of her last 4 fights, she's gotten a win. She's lost 2 out of her last 4, had a draw in there. Her last fight, she had the loss to Macy Barber, which was a bad look, where she kind of just got held against the cage the whole fight. And if you're looking at a fight like this, that's not something that gives you a lot of confidence. But De La Rosa has good wrestling background herself. She's 125 or 135, so she's probably going to be a little bigger. She has the reach advantage. She has decent kicks. She's southpaw. I think of pure striking, she has the better hands too. But we haven't seen Suarez striking in a long time. I mean, she could have leveled up the striking too. I mean, who knows? But with De La Rosa on the ground, she has decent jiu-jitsu, and her top game is pretty good. But she's not going to get on top of Suarez in that one. That one I almost guarantee you, unless a trip or she knocks her down or something. But I'll be very, very surprised. But I feel like I got to go with Suarez in this one. I'm going to say she's going to finish her in the second or third with that pace and grappling. But it's just a to be determined with me. I mean, I would never bet that minus 750. It's just, is she going to look like that, like she did when she fought before the Ansaroff fight? It's just hard to say. So I got Suarez. I'm going to say late second round, rear naked choke victory for Suarez. But yeah, let's see what she looks like. And up next here, we got Augusto Sakai taking on Dontel Mays. And man, I don't really got a lot to say about this fight. These are the type of fights, like, there's certain fights where, some people, you hear them say, oh, when there's a women's fight, I'll just leave. Or, if this guy's fighting, I'm just going to go get a drink because they're so boring. But, man, these are the type of fights where that's my thing with these fights. Like, every fight, it seems like, every card, UFC has to put on one of these trash heavyweight fights where it's like, if they don't finish in the first round, it's going to be some low-level bullshit. But, yeah, they're throwing this fight on the main card here. Augusto Sakai taking on Dontel Mays. And Sakai is coming off 4 knockout losses in a row, but he has been facing some high-level competition. Dontel Mays, he had 2 in a row. Then he came up against Hamdi Abdelwanab, who is like a former Olympic wrestler who was on the juice. He failed, so he ended up losing that fight by a split decision, but it ended up turning into a no contest. So he has a chance to get 3 wins in a row here. And Mays is a guy that I think he's made a lot of improvements. I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit. If you look at his first performance on the Ultimate Contender Series, where he was on that Snoop cast, and Snoop Dogg would say he's not invited to the cookout and all that, to where he is when he is beating the shit out of Josh Parisian. And I think he's definitely upped his level pretty significantly. And with Sakai, you can almost say the opposite. Like, he's regressed since he had that run after the Overeem fight. But he's still 31, so he's young, and so is Mays. Both these guys are on the much younger side for heavyweight. And when you look at how these guys match up, I mean, Augusto Sakai, recently he's not pressured like he used to and try to play on the outside type of game. But I think that's because he was fighting the Tai Tuivasas of the world, the Sergey Spivaks, where one guy could knock you out with one punch. The other guy was trying to take him down the whole time. This fight, he has to go back to pressuring. Mays doesn't do good against pressure. he doesn't do good on the inside. He likes to be on the outside, throwing those straight shots, uppercuts, spins, being pretty, has pretty good kicks. Very athletic, tall guy. If he can keep it at distance, he's going to have the speed advantage and the reach advantage and probably be able to piece Sakai up. But I think this fight's going to be more played in the clinch on the inside. And Mays has gotten a lot better with his clinch game, with his takedown game. And Sakai's good with that clinch game as well. That's where he's at the best, I would feel like. And that's where I think he has the best chance to wear on Mays with those clinch knees, pushing him against the cage, and just using that pressure. So Sakai's going to want to come with the pressure him to the cage type of hold him against the cage knee type of game plan, in my opinion. And Mays is going to want to be able to be the more dynamic guy on the outside, touch Sakai as he comes in, try to do damage, and then control the clinch himself. And ultimately, I mean, I don't really have a strong opinion on this fight. I think either guy could win, honestly. But I'm going to go with Dontel Mays just because he is a fighter with more momentum. I think he's a little bit more athletic. You got to think that the 4 knockout losses for Sakai, not only is it damage, but it's mental damage. And I don't know where he's at in his head. So I'm going to say Mays goes in there, and I'm going to say it's a decision win, a terrible fight, sloppy type of fight. But I'm going to go with Dontel Mays for the win. And this next fight's a pretty strong co-main event for a fight night, in my opinion, especially nowadays with Andre Muniz versus Brendan Allen. Both these guys are on win streaks. Brendan Allen's won 3 fights in a row in the UFC. Andre Muniz is undefeated in the UFC and ran through almost everyone that he's fought. Last fight against Uriah Hall went to decision, kind of a boring fight, but before that he was collecting people's arms left and right. And Brendan Allen has been getting finishes lately too. He ran through Krzysztof Jotko in his last fight, who, say what you want about Jotko, he's in the PFL now, but that's a guy that was in the top 15 for a long, long time in the UFC. I mean, five years, and no one really ran through Jotko like that. So Brendan Allen had a really good performance in that one. And, yeah, I mean, when you look at this fight, it's interesting. I feel like the line's a little off now at this point. They got Brendan Allen almost 2-1 underdog. I think he's definitely the value side, but Muniz is a hard guy to fade, especially at this point, because he just has those long arms. His striking is awkward, but you could tell it's getting a little bit better. He's got the distance control, and he's getting a little better with the straight punches. I still think his striking is suspect for sure, and I think Allen is the better striker if he can keep it standing. But Muniz has great timing on the doubles, and he gets you to think he's going to exchange with you, then level changes. He was getting singles against the cage in his last fight, which Brendan Allen struggles to defend single legs. We saw that against Jacob Malkoun. And he also is good at using the single to get to the back, which against Brendan Allen I think could be something he could do. Allen tends to give his back to stand up. And Allen's really good defensively from the back. Like, he's good at not getting choked, eventually turning in, getting in top position, or working back to his feet. But against Sergi Pano, man, if that guy gets your back, I think it's going to be really hard to escape. And, yeah, I mean, when you look at Andre Muniz, the guy's just a beast in certain positions on the ground. I don't think he's necessarily as high level a jiu-jitsu guy as some people like to say. I mean, he did get Jacare with that armbar, but I don't think he's like one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the UFC. I feel like he has a few positions where he's really elite, like that armbar from the back mount, and he's really good at controlling position when he gets to that back mount. But we've seen him lose position. We saw his fight with Antonio Arroyo where he ended up on his back several times, and he was threatening, but you could tell he got tired after not getting a few submissions and started to get held down, and that was a very close fight, split decision against a guy that's not really a super high-level fighter. So you've seen where certain fighters have given Muniz some issues too, and you saw also in that fight Antonio Arroyo throw up some leg locks, and Andre Muniz ended up getting swept by leg locks, things like that, which is a little bit interesting to see, because if Muniz isn't really adept with that leg lock game, Brendan Allen has shown that he'll attack leg locks and go for submissions with that. So that could be something that Allen is looking at in his back pocket from watching tape. But Brendan Allen is also a really good grappler himself. He has issues with takedown defense though, and that's why I'm more leaning towards Sergio Pano to get the win, just because I think he's going to be able to take him down and take his back and control him. I don't think Allen's going to let him really do much in terms of progressing to a submission. I think he's going to be, ready to defend that armbar and the rear naked chokes, but I think Sergio Pano, just like the Uriah Hall fight, is going to be content to control position from there. And for Allen, he has to just make it a real high-paced fight. If he can get in his face on the feet, if he can time a takedown, put Sergio Pano on his back and get him tired by defending some submissions, or start roughing him up and make it more of his fight where he's the bully, then Allen definitely could win. And I feel like he's a decent bet at the price tag that he's at, just because Sergio Pano has a little bit of deficiencies, I believe, in cardio and striking. But I think he's so good with the grappling, man, and I think that his wrestling is only getting better. Brendan Allen's a guy that doesn't have the best takedown defense. I've seen him give his back in multiple fights, and I feel like Andre Muniz can probably take advantage of that, just control the back and win this fight via decision. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. If Brendan Allen ends up really trying to engage in the grappling, like if Muniz takes his back and he's trying to really get out of the position, then maybe a submission will open up for Muniz. But I think Allen's going to be smart, know that he can't get overzealous on the ground with Muniz when he's in a bad spot, and it's going to lead to a lot of stagnation, and I see Muniz winning this fight by decision. And for the co-main event, we got a great fight at 205 pounds between Nikita Krylov and Ryan Spann. Both these guys have looked really good lately, and they're definitely knocking on the door for that title shot. Ryan Spann, that was a brutal knockout, man. His last fight against Dominic Reyes, just absolutely amazing. And Ryan Spann's guy, I've been trying to tell you guys for a while, man. I mean, I remember back in the day when I would pick Ryan Spann, I would be like, so against Ryan Spann, man. People hated that guy. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, they just, like, were not on Ryan Spann, man. And I would pick him. And sometimes I was wrong. Like, I picked him against Johnny Walker, for instance. Everyone was against me on that one. And I just remember, he ended up losing that fight in a real dumb way. And even I was kind of down on him there. But then he came back, got the win over Misha. He lost to Anthony Smith in another fight where it's kind of a head-scratcher. But came back and dominated Yohan Cutelaba and Dom Reyes. So when he's on, and he's super dangerous. And Krylov, he got that quick knockout over Gustafsson, which to me didn't really show much. I mean, Gustafsson is not in his prime anymore, to say the least. And then his last fight, he had a tough fight with Volkan Oezdemir where weathered the storm early, almost got knocked out in that first minute almost, and then ended up kind of taking control of the fight after that and dominating for the last, 13 minutes of the fight kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, this fight, it's tough to trust either guy because you got Ryan Spann, he has a questionable chin. He's someone that makes mistakes mentally at times, and you see him brawling and doing things he shouldn't do. And then Nikita Krylov is the same way. I mean, he's a guy that likes to brawl, makes a lot of mental mistakes, and his fight IQ is very questionable. So I feel like both these guys are hard to trust, or hard to put your money down on at the window. But when you're looking at how both these guys fight, I feel like, man, I mean, it's gonna be a really, really fun fight. I think it's gonna be over in the first round. This one, I think it's gonna be a quick one. With Ryan Spann, we got a guy, in my opinion, that recently has fought much more technical, and he has, I believe, one of the longest reaches, if not the longest reach, at 205. And his jab is on point, super fast, straight punches. His check hook is nasty, and he just has really, really elite power and hand speed, especially for that weight. So yeah, man, I mean, he just has the ability to walk you down. He's a little bit lumbering, but he'll throw some kicks from the outside and use that length, snipe you. And he has a good high guard when he wants to. He could be defensively sound. You look at that fight with Anthony Smith. I don't know if he was emotional in that fight or what it was. It was his first main event with the UFC, but he went out there and was just brawling right away and got countered, got clipped. And Ryan Spann can't brawl with guys, man. He's got to keep it technical because his chin is questionable, man. He doesn't take damage that well. And if he keeps it technical here and sharp, he's going to catch Krylov and knock him out, or catch him and end up making Krylov shoot bad takedown and submit him, I just feel like Spann is technically superior. He's the better athlete. He's faster. He's more powerful. He's way more dangerous on the ground and on the feet early. And if he's fighting sharp, he's composed, he's on his game, I think Ryan Spann is going to run through Krylov in the first round. But with Krylov, we got a guy that is very skilled in his own right. And if this fight goes long, it's going to start to favor Krylov with the cardio. I feel like Krylov does a really good job of pushing the high pace, mixing in the wrestling with the striking. And he throws a lot of kicks from the outside, a lot of diversity with his kicks, front kicks, round kicks, question mark kicks, spin kicks. And he also throws real fast head kicks with both legs, so you just never know what he's going to throw up there. He has fast, straight punches, and he's good at using his punches and his kicks to set up the level changes and keep the pace high. He could take you down and control you on top. One thing about Krylov is he does wrestle himself into a lot of submissions at times, and with Ryan Spann, I don't think he wants to grapple with Spann, man. Spann has some of the best front chokes in the UFC, and I feel like if Krylov decides to wrestle with Spann, I think Spann is going to be able to catch him in a submission. especially early. I think as the fight goes on, if he's like second, third, fourth, fifth round, maybe not second, third, fourth, fifth round, yeah, then you can go and start taking down Spann when he's really tired and you don't think he might have enough squeeze in the choke or he's not going to be as quick with the sit-ups anymore. But early on, when you're both dry, I would not advise grappling with Spann. I would advise sticking and moving, trying to use your foot speed and countering him with the shots and trying to maybe touch his chin and knock him out. But I think either guy could get a knockout here just because I think Spann's chin's a little bit questionable. But I just see Spann as a superior fighter, man. I know Nikita Krylov's a beast. I know he can mix it up. He's young and he's improving. But I just feel like Spann is too athletic, too powerful. I think he's going to touch him early. I think he's either going to knock him out, out cold, or I think he's going to hurt him pretty bad where Krylov is going to shoot in a bad takedown. I think he's going to snatch that neck and bring it home with him. So I'm going with Ryan Spann, man. Another first-round knockout in this one and getting the victory. I know a lot of people, they listen to Spann during the week and they're kind of like, is this guy telling the truth? Like his first training camp for his last fight with Reyes, and then this time he was saying he doesn't even know who Nikita Krylov is. He's never heard of him. But I feel like Ryan Spann's one of these guys that doesn't like to give away a lot to the media. He's training with Saif Saud over there at Fortis, and those guys are going to have everything on point, and he's going to be knowing what Nikita Krylov wants to do, and he's going to have a game plan, and he's going to be training. So I think he's kind of just someone that he knows he can get headlines off that after he saw what he said in the cage, even though I think that was kind of just like a slip. And then I feel like he just doesn't like giving away a lot to the media. But I'm going with Ryan Spann, man. I think Ryan Spann's going to get the job done in this one. Cash as the underdog. I think he has a pretty decent value too. So give me Ryan Spann in the main event. I'm going to say first round submission as the official pick. And in terms of my most confident pick and parlay of the week, for my most confident pick on this card, kind of a tough one, I guess. I would say Joe Solecki at minus 600, but those odds just aren't that good. But I guess he would be my most confident pick. And for my parlay of the week, I'm not going to do a parlay of the week. I'm just going to do a play of the week. I'm going to do it on the under 1.5 rounds for the Spann and Krylov fight, which is at minus 150 right now. So that's going to be my play of the week for you guys. So thanks for watching, guys. If you want action on all these other shows that are going on this week, there's a hell of a lot of MMA going on, from One Championship to PFL to Bellator. They got KSW. So a lot of stuff going on this week. If you want access to that, you know where to go. Patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. You get access to some of the best bets around, man. And I've been killing it this year. I feel like I'm, one of the best at this. I'm going to continue to keep it going, man. So, yeah, go to that Patreon, patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. Start making yourself some money and get access to all those other promotions, support the channel and all that. So really appreciate that's everyone that's all over there already and everyone that's going to go there in the future. And we're going to keep collecting this cash. But yeah, man, thanks for watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.